This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to Purpose-Driven Sobriety. Thank you for listening to the Purpose-Driven Sobriety podcast. My name is Christine, and I'm an alcoholic. I would like to thank today's sponsor. She is choosing to remain anonymous, but she is a friend to all of us in recovery, especially in the Central Texas area. I'm very grateful. You know who you are. Thank you so, so much for your support. Today on the show, we have Mr. Todd H. on the show. I met Todd through one of the recovery pages, and I've said this a gazillion times on the show that I'm a firm believer. This is my personal opinion. You are free to agree or disagree as you so choose. But I'm a firm believer in in-person meetings. But online support groups, I think, really have their place, especially since 2020. But just like with everything else, you try them on, see if they fit. Find where you fit in and what fits you well. So anyway, without further ado, Todd, thanks for coming on the show with me.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
No worries. Well, on the show, all we do is we just share, what it was like, what happened, and what we're like now. Just sharing our experience, strength, and hope with that person that still suffers. If you're anything like me, you can easily, in your mind's eye, go back to, whatever date it was that you reached where you reached, that we're trying to reach that person with some hope. So I would love to, I usually wait. I don't want to hear your story until, you tell it on the show. That way it's fresh and new to me. So I can't wait to hear all the things that made Todd. Tell me your story, Todd.
Awesome. Let me do that. I've told my story quite often. I just celebrated 2 years in November.
Congratulations.
11th. Thank you. That's also the day my wife and I decided to get married a year ago. So that's what I'm doing today. But I used to tell my story, and it has a lot of stuff like prison and death and stuff like in it. And people should know that, I guess, but it's not who I am, I guess. But there was a lot of years of it, right? And that's, it's, I don't like to focus on it, we'll say, but it's part of my story. Uh-huh. So I'll give you the rundown. I'm 52 now, so I consider myself pretty old. I don't say that to anyone else that's my age, but I feel older because I wasted a lot of years in addiction, 25 or so. But I started off, I'm from Utah, started off in a small subdivision or a small town in Salt Lake called Sandy. It was a nicer part of Salt Lake up on the hill, we'll say. I had two educated parents. Both of them went to BYU. Dad was a computer programmer when it first started. Mom was a school teacher. And I was really afforded the best life possible. I was spoiled. I was one of four children. I was the only and oldest boy. So I was pretty much, we'll call Mom's favorite son. I'm her only son, but she calls me her favorite son, so that makes me feel good. I wish I would have done more in my life. I'm working on doing more in my life to give back to Mom for what she's done for me. But I started off normal. Is there such thing as normal? I don't know if we like to use that word in recovery. Yeah. We don't use that word, but I was afforded every opportunity, every privilege as a child, upper middle income class. And so things were okay for a while. We moved, the worst thing that happened was at 10 years old, we moved to Cardston, Alberta, Canada. My dad's family's from there. And I went from having all this stuff as a young boy, every toy I wanted, everything I could ever ask my parents for, to moving to the farm and learning how to milk over 100 head of cattle morning and night, and really going to work. And at 10 years old, and this was culture shock. This was like, no, I don't want any part of this. It sucked. It was really cold, 30, 40 below in the winter time. But so that was a change for me. We took over my dad's, his father's farm. He ran himself over with a tractor. But what happened at that time, this was also the first time for me where violence was introduced into my life. I went to school, and the school we went to, the town we lived in, bordered what was called the Blood Indian Reserve. It was a native reservation there, the Blood Indians. And when I went to school, I had red hair, and I had freckles, and I had glasses. So I imagine even probably you were one of the ones who teased me when I was young. I'm just kidding. Well, that red hair and freckles and glasses didn't go over well as a young boy. I was teased. I would get off the bus and I would get beat up by 2 or 3 of these native kids at the same time, just because of the way I looked. And I don't remember why. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why this was happening to me. I wish nobody any ill will or harm on anybody. I was a loving kid. But that was really my first take on violence. So I put this in the back of my head, and I was, like I said, I was picked on. I was just seemed to be my destination, seemed to be my destiny. And that would go on for a while. Thankfully, the farm didn't pan out. We were there a few years, and we moved back to the States. We moved to St. George, Utah. It's in southern Utah. And I was looking like a farm kid, still dressed like a farm kid, still had red hair, freckles, and glasses. And I landed in a middle school now back in the States where I didn't look any part of it. So, I mean, I didn't look normal at all. So it just got worse, the bullying, the teasing. Every day I would walk down the hall in this middle school I landed at, and the school bully would push me and I'd drop all my books. Every day without fail, if not a couple times a day. And that was, so I didn't fit in. And one Christmas I went to my grandpa's, he lived in central Utah. My grandpa's from the old school. And I told him what was happening with this bullying. I thought I was in trouble because my grandpa was going to whip my butt. He said, if you ever start a fight, I'll whip your ass, I'll whip your butt. He said, but if you ever run from one, I'll whip it worse. So now I'm not even a violent person. I don't fight. I didn't know how to fight, but he proceeded to tell me that this is what you're going to do. And he rehearsed this with me on the Christmas vacation. The next time this bully pushes me, I'm going to grab him by the collar and I'm going to sink my fist into his nose and he's going to fall down and his eyes are going to turn black. My grandpa told me all this and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm 12 years old. I don't, but I didn't want to be bullied anymore. I didn't have friends. But long story short, I did that and I went just as I rehearsed. I think I broke the bully's nose and immediately I went to the principal's office. I told him what I did and I didn't get in trouble for it at all. And this kid was still probably laying out in the hall, bleeding all over the hallway in front of all these kids. And there was quite a good feeling coming from that, unfortunately, that, yay, I just beat up the bully. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that violence wasn't right. I'm not, I'm an older brother to 3 sisters, and I was taught not to be violent with them. I was taught not to be violent with anybody. So this didn't really take with me. But this would also be the time in my life when, I'm still, I had gained some attention, but I still didn't have any friends. And there was these kids out on the playground. They were dressed darker, concert clothes, concert T-shirts and stuff. And I could see smoking, or maybe they were smoking. But I went out and to these kids, and they accepted me right off the bat and handed me a cigarette at 12. And the next day, it was one of the kids had brought roaches from their parents' ashtray. And so I had started smoking roaches, marijuana roaches. And And I just fitting in. All of a sudden, I'm thinking I'm just the coolest cup of tea in the world. I've got friends now. And it wasn't a day or two later that one kid had brought a bottle. I think it was vodka or Everclear. It might have been vodka. Stole it from his mom and dad's liquor cabinet and brought that to school out on the playground. Here we are in 6th grade. And I remember taking that first drink. I can still remember the warmth of it hitting my belly today and what that felt like. I think any of us who have been alcoholic or in any way, shape, or form remembers that. And I just remember the warmth that came over me and immediately the love that I had for that I was finally, this is where I wanted to be. I'm accepted. Right? These are my best friends now. They brought this alcohol. I don't care what they do or what they say, they're my best friends. And so it went on like this for a while. And this is not to mention a shady bunch of kids. Obviously, they had the outcasts. They were those kids, and one of them I really liked. I got to know pretty well. He was a couple years older than me. His sister lived in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is only 2 hours from St. George, Utah, and his sister called us and came up with this harebrained idea that if we took stolen cars to Las Vegas, her boyfriend would pay us $500 a car. I'm still 12 years old, right? I don't even drive. I drive because I learned how to drive on the farm, a tractor. I learned how to drive at 10 years old. So I'm well on and above my years in a lot of things, but mostly just in learning how to get in trouble now. So he told me about this, and we proceeded to think we're going to take stolen cars to the Viva Las Vegas. And we tried, and we spent a couple days acquiring or working on getting these cars. We ended up stealing 12 or 13 vehicles, trying just to get one vehicle to St. George, or to Las Vegas, I'm sorry. And when we left St. George, finally in this truck, after we had torn up all the valley at our young age, we had a carton of cigarettes on the dashboard. I'm still 12 years old. We had a bottle of liquor under the seat and an AR-15 of his father's in the vehicle, not realizing what the danger involved in what we were doing. I grew up, my grandpa taught me how to hunt and fish. I knew about guns. Never would I use them on a person. I was or even, why did we even have that gun? I don't know. But we ended up spinning out. The truck, it was wintertime. The truck spun out on I-15, and we ended up in the burro pit. And right behind us was a Nevada Ranger.
Oh, my
goodness.
goodness.
The Nevada Ranger immediately pulled over. He's checking us, making sure we're okay. And I'm scared to death, right? Now I'm 12, still 12 years old. I'm scared to death. And he's patting us down and making sure we're okay. He says, I'm good size for 12, but my 14-year-old friend, he's even bigger than me. He could have been 18 or 20, right? And the officer asked, where's your license? We said, well, we left it back in Las Vegas at Motel 6. I've never even been to Las Vegas. Didn't know if there was a Motel 6, but just figured that would work. And he's actually buying into this. And a second later, there was an APB come over his radio. The vehicle we were in, they read off the license plate. It came over the radio to this officer, and he looked at both of us, and he smashed our faces into the hood of the truck. And at this point, I was probably crying. So that's my first take on getting in trouble, where this life was leading me already at 12 years old. We were in Nevada, so I didn't get the opportunity to go back to this, little Mormon state of Utah, to a nice little detention center there. They took us to Las Vegas DT. And at that age, and I remember going there and seeing guys with like hairnets on their heads, Latinos, and kids who had been convicted of killing policemen at 14 and 16 years old. So all of a sudden I'm thrown into this mix of people, and it was destined to get worse. I didn't want it to. I was scared. We ended up going back to Utah to court on all this, and I got like 1,500 work hours for it. So it was all I got. Being so young, excuse me. But my grandpa stepped in. They were going to give me away to the state. They were going to take me from my parents and give me away because this is not a way a child should act, right? So my grandpa, the same one that told me to beat this bully up, stepped in and said, I'll take the boy. He took me back to his place, which was in the country in central Utah. And I was working off these work hours, trying to toe the line, be a good kid, still trying to sneak smoke in and do these things. My grandpa wasn't having it, and he was strict with me. I tried that for a while. My mom and dad had moved to San Antonio, Texas. And this is where Texas comes in. I'm down there. Okay, this is where I got my little taste of Texas. I moved down to San Antonio, a little town called Bernie, outside of San Antonio. And I wanted to live back with my mom and dad. And my grandpa was too hard to live with. This guy making me not smoke. He's making me work hard. He's making me get good grades. He would actually go to my school to make sure that I wouldn't leave school and go out to smoke. He'd sit and talk to all the jocks and all the cheerleaders 8 hours a day. And sit in my high school, my middle school, it was ninth grade and I considered high school, and make sure that I didn't leave to go smoking. So I'm like, I can't have this. Is So I moved down to San Antonio with my parents. I left one Christmas and stayed with them. And this was at a time when my dad would spring on me and my mom and sisters that he is going to live an alternative lifestyle. He's actually gay. After having 4 children and being married for close to 20 years at the time. And I'm like, I think I was 15 or 16. I'm like, wow. I didn't know what that meant at that age. This was what, 38, 40 years ago, something like that. And that didn't land well with me. What do you mean you're gay and you're leaving the family? And yeah, that's how it went down. So here I was learning how to be a man, or I thought I was learning how to be a man, and my dad wants to be with men. It just didn't compute in my head. So now, I'm already getting in trouble. I'm already rebelling. I'm already doing the marijuana and drinking and stuff. But now I'm really angry. And it just didn't go over well. When mom and my sisters and I moved back to Utah, and I think, and I vowed that I would be the male of the house. I would take care of mom and my sisters, and I didn't. I just started partying. I was introduced to cocaine, to LSD, mushrooms. I dropped out of school to work full time so that I could support my habits. And I'm literally 16, 17 years old, and it wasn't looking good. I did hold down a full-time job in the construction industry. I framed homes for a living, but instead of being a good older brother and good son to my mom, I wasn't living accordingly. So this went on for a while. The normal drinking and smoking pot and what I thought was normal, and it's just what we did. I worked hard. I ended up with a gal, and we started having kids. Why not? Let's just start having kids. I ended up marrying her, I think, after our 3rd child, but it was like that was the thing to do, just start having kids. And so all of a sudden I go from not having a dad or not even knowing what a dad was like, because he never really was. We're looking back at like all the signs of like what his life, why he was like that. He never really was part of the family. He took care of our family. Don't get me wrong. My dad always, he was responsible. He was a hard worker, and he made sure we had what we needed, but he never went to soccer games or football games, things like this. Didn't get involved. It was just all about overworking and hard work. And I resented him for that. But here I was now myself starting a family, and I didn't even know how to be a dad. I didn't take to that initial moment when the child is born, that immediate connection. It was just like, what do I do? Just pay for, just make sure the children are fed and paid for. And I wasn't really jiving, I wasn't really connected as a father or a spouse. And so we did get married in our living room. It was low key, and it just wasn't right. I started my own company at the bequest of her uncle. He knew that he saw that I was really good at what I did, really good at framing homes, and he wanted me to start a company, and I did. and it went bad. He was in it for the money and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of how that went down. At that time, though, this was the mid 90s. I still enjoyed hunting and fishing. I went on a hunting trip. We went out coyote hunting or something, and I was with a couple guys, and we were in a truck. It was wintertime. We were up in Wyoming somewhere. And one of my friends, he reached around behind me, and he had a CD case, and he reached around behind me, and there was some powder on it, on the CD case, and it said, "Here, snort this." I said, "Okay, why not? I'll do it." My motto was, "I'll try anything once except for boys." I said, "I pretty much do anything in life, but except for boys, because my dad was gay." So willing to do and try anything for the fun of it. It was crank. It was, it was an amphetamine before meth came out, and I fell in love. I remember the time that I drank alcohol, how much I was in love with alcohol. Well, this feeling that came over my head when I did crank, which is an amphetamine, was I can't even express to you the love I had for life. All of a sudden, I loved everything in life. I loved the guy who gave it to me. I loved looking out the window. I love the thought, hey, I'm going to be able to work on the job site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm going to make millions of dollars, and everything's going to be fine. Now, that's not how it went down, obviously, because, there's reality. And I fell into not only a crank addiction, but it seemed like a short couple months later, someone came around with this clear powdery stuff, and it was called methamphetamine. And if I thought that I loved crank, well, meth was just like a way more beautiful woman than crank. Crank was dirty, and meth was just so much cleaner and higher. And now I'm pretty much crazy, right? Now I'm pretty much an amphetamine user, addict, and my business only lasted maybe 6 months to a year. Construction company was doing really well. I had great potential. I'd stopped going to the job site. I'd take my trailer and truck to work, and I'd end up going to the dope man's house or leaving my guys unattended, my employees. And so I lost that company real quick. And with that, crystal meth at the time was really expensive. It was manufactured here in the States compared to where, now it's mostly in Mexico. But I ended up not being able to afford it. And what I did, the ingenious person I thought I was, well, I'll just start making it. Why don't I just start making it? And then I don't have to pay $350 for an 8-ball. And I just started making it. Now, all of a sudden, I'm a meth cook. Long story short. And I walked away from my wife and children. I abandoned my wife and children to be a meth cook. And I left one day for diapers and milk and bread, and they will still harass me to this day about this. And I didn't go home for 2 weeks. And I went and cooked meth, and I went on, and I ended up with a couple girlfriends at the same time I was married to cooking meth, because meth cooks were real popular and important people in society. You see, that's what I thought. And I ended up having 2 children out of wedlock with a couple of these girlfriends while I was married to my wife. And so definitely devastated this woman, my wife I was married to at the time. And you can imagine the trauma and pain that caused not only her, but my children as well, that have siblings, inside this marriage. And my life was now on the downward spiral. There was no hope left at that point. Many people who have done meth know immediately what it does to your mind. It shuts off any form of common sense, and that just goes to the wayside. And so I was addicted to meth. I was manufacturing meth, and lo and behold, one of my partners that I was working with, ended up getting caught by the marshals or police, and he ended up setting me up. So now, manufacturing is a first-degree felony in the state of Utah. It's a 5 to life sentence, and now all of a sudden I go from these stolen cars at 12 years old. That's not much. Well, now I'm a big-time criminal, and I just got charged with a manufacturing charge. And I sat in jail for a year on it. And And they let me out. They gave me a chance to go to a place called Odyssey House. I don't know if they have those in Texas. They're all over the country, but very intense program. At the time, it was 4 to 6 years long, like an inpatient program that you basically are sentenced to and you're committed to. And I went, well, great, I'll go do Odyssey House. And it let me out to go try that. And I walked in the back door, and the next morning I snuck out the window. So I wasn't going to do a program. I wanted to get high. I was methamphetamine, and I had thrown so much of my life away at that time. I couldn't see ever coming back from it. It's all the things I had lost, including my wife and children. There was just not going to be any coming back from that. So I just wanted to go back to using and get back in that mindset that I don't think about all those things I've lost or the pain. When I walked away from the program, and this was after a judge told me, I'm going to give you a chance to this program. If you mess up, you're going to go to prison. Well, I didn't hear them. I must not have heard them. I must have been like short of hearing from running saws and nail guns, whatever, or it's just me because I heard, but I didn't think about what would happen when I left and I was sentenced to prison for the first time when I ran from the program. And that was a big to do. I was pretty scared. You know, there's the things that happen in prison are true. I won't go into them. They didn't. They are and they're not. I mean, you know, prison you can navigate. You can get in trouble if you want, and you can go that way, or you can be a victim, or you can choose to do your own time. You know, it's really up to the person. But it was scary. I got sentenced to prison. 23 months, 26 months. The first time on my charge until I hit the parole board. I did a drug program, was walking the line in there, really staying out of trouble. I was ready to be the man I knew I could be in life. Got out of the prison gates, and they let me out after 24, 26 months. And went and checked in with my parole officer, and he said, Todd, you can do anything, just don't do meth. I'm like, well, what does that mean? These people keep giving me this ultimatum, the judges, now my parole officers tell me I can do anything. Well, anything to me means meth. So I think I was literally out of my first parole a couple of weeks after being locked up for 26 months. I made it might have been a couple months. I don't remember. It was in 2001 I got out. But immediately I went back to prison. And I didn't understand because I consider myself a fairly smart kid. I didn't finish high school until I got to prison. Actually, I took my GED, but I would go on and take a psychology degree later in life. But I've considered myself pretty smart. I just couldn't stay away from this methamphetamine. There was no way that if you even take the handcuffs off me or let me out of the prison, that's what I'm going to straight to. Yeah, and it didn't matter. Just like a dog returning to his vomit every time. And I didn't understand it, and they put me back in prison. And here I was again, and I told them, I think I'm crazy for coming back here this soon. And they took me literally, and they put me in the forensic unit in prison for testing and evaluation. And I literally told them I thought it was crazy. And what would happen was that would serve a purpose. I was around a therapist because a couple months after being back there I was still in the holding cell for 24 hours a day. It was pretty rough. They called me out to the button. They said, Hulk, come out to the button. Someone in your family's died. And that's a pretty cold way to tell somebody. And, you know, prison, there's not very much empathy in prison. And they just said, come out to this little squawk box on the wall. Someone's died. And so I'm freaking out. I go out there, and I didn't have a phone call. I used my only phone call for the week, and they weren't going to give me one. Wait, you're telling me somebody's died. And they're just like, no, wait, and this therapist is going to come see you and tell you, oh, no. And the way it went down, it was I never thought it would have been this person, but we went in an office, and the therapist, we made a call on, and I can still remember the voice call, and we could both hear it. And I called home to my sister, and she told me my baby sister had died in a motel. She was 20 years old. And she had died around 7 of my so-called friends using meth. And they cleaned up the room around her and they left her there. They didn't call to get her help. They didn't try to revive her. They cleaned up the room around her and left my sister's cold dead body in the motel room. My so-called friends. So that was real hard on me. That was a turning point, I would say, but a turning point for the worst. Like I was already messed up from the drugs, but now this was real. Now the life's been taken from this, right? And I told you that I didn't feel like I was a great older brother, a great example as an older brother. And so I've started taking this on. This is my fault, and so now I'm really hell-bent for leather. On one hand, I'm saying, Becky, I promise I'll never do drugs again. I'm going to live your life as a legacy. They wouldn't even let me go to the funeral without paying 2 federal marshals $10,000 a piece because I had not shown up for court. That's the thing about doing what I'm supposed to do, but that one choice I have over here, I'd always take that other choice. And so it didn't look good for me and I didn't want the people at the funeral, my family, to see me in shackles and chains. But it was hard. I got out and my sister showed me pictures of her funeral until one came up with her in the casket, and that floored me. That was probably the hardest picture for me, or hardest scene I've ever seen in my life. And instead of not doing drugs, I think I lasted a couple more months out on parole that time, and I fell off again. I wasn't getting it. I was bound and determined to destroy myself. The pain was too much. I ended up going back a third time to state prison, and they finally terminated me. I think we're about 6 years into this prison system thing by now. They're finally terminating me, and a week before my termination out of state prison, I get a knock at the door, not a knock at the door, but a couple of visitors show up. One of them was a federal prosecutor who had an attorney for me, and they're going to now federally indict me on charges of manufacturing that I had done when I was out on parole. So now I've been to state prison, and now the feds have picked me up, and I'm a week from getting out of state prison, and now the feds want me. And I'm thinking, no. And I know that the feds have a 95% success rate in convicting people. If they have a case against you, you're basically done. If they open an indictment on you, you're done. And so I asked, what do you want? And it was a partial fingerprint of a scar I have on my finger that was on a piece of glassware. A partial fingerprint. And it does not even, they have to have 12 points usually to a Latin fingerprint. They only had 9, but they had a scar on my finger placed me at the scene. I said, so what do you guys want? And they said, well, the guidelines are 3 years, 0 to 3 years. But if you fight it, we'll give you 10 for conspiracy to commit the crime. Oh, man. So I signed up for 3 years, and lo and behold, I got out of state prison. Everything's fine. And I think I went back to work. And within the first week or two I was working, the marshals stormed my house and took me in on this federal case. So here we go again. It's just when I thought I was doing right, I had a little bit of hope. I was going to do well, that, my past would come back to haunt me. And that wasn't so bad. It was going to be 3 years. I think I ended up stretching that out more than 3. But I was in a holding cell waiting for what's called Con Air. Many people know what Con Air is. It's a cool little movie. It's real close to the movie, but Con Air is how they fly you to the federal prison. And I was waiting for Con Air to pick me up, and I got another one of those phone calls about someone in my family dying in the same cold way. Come out to the button on the wall, and someone in your family's died. And reluctantly and wondered, with everything going on in my head, who could this be this time? I got out there and was told that my 16-year-old daughter had taken her own life. And this was the daughter I was supposed to be a father to. This is, I was supposed to be her dad. I wasn't supposed to cook meth and do all these things. I was supposed to give her a life, and protect her. And I failed miserably at that. So that was hard. The feds weren't going to let me go to that funeral for sure. They weren't going. You don't get let out of federal custody, and so there was a lot of anger and resentment there, mostly towards myself. But here I am piling all these things in this bag of resentments behind me for my choices and actions. And this is pretty serious now. Two lives, innocent lives lost, which I felt were on my watch, my responsibility. And so there wasn't, I remember that being I went out to prison, I think that time, a year or so. It was a short guideline they signed me up for, so that I still messed it up. I was there a year or so in Arizona and came home and messed up again. They finally terminated me, I think, after 3 or 4 tries in the federal system. And I'm just a mess, right? The drugs weren't working, but I couldn't live without them. I moved home to mom's basement in Salt Lake, and I basically just lived being high on meth. I didn't want to go out and commit crime to acquire the drugs, but I didn't want to work. I didn't want to live. I was just in a real bad place. And I existed like that. I would tell you that the worst feeling I've ever had in my life is using meth or any drugs and someone or something not stepping in to intervene, not getting caught, just living in a place of like no hope. There's no hope at all, So I was existing like this. And thankfully, the drug came along now. And but if this was my only saving grace, a couple years into this, someone brought over this stuff called bath salt. I don't know if y'all heard of that down in Texas. Have you ever heard of that? It's
I've heard the term, but educate me.
Yeah, but it's not that stuff that your granny had on by the bath. That's a marketing ploy. They actually use to sell it in smoke shops and stuff. But if I thought that I loved meth and crank, when I tried this stuff, I would cheat on meth and crank any day with bath salt. It was like 50 times stronger than meth and crank and cocaine put together, right? Now I found my saving grace. Now this is going to be my world. Unfortunately, it became my world, and the insanity. And if I thought that I was making poor choices on meth, bath salt's so much worse. To even think that I can still put sentences together is pretty much a miracle today. From my use, I used it intravenously. I used meth intravenously. I was a mess. This would go on a number of years. I just exist. I ended up accruing some charges, smaller charges. Once again, didn't go to court for them. Ended up on probation for them. But in 2017, I was with a lifelong friend of mine, and we were real high on bath salt. And he had been jumped by some gang members of a opposing gang. I never got into the gangs. I wasn't like it. I knew a lot of gangs. I knew most of the leaders of most of the gangs, if that makes any sense, because I sold the meth, right? Meth is not racist. It's not biased. Doesn't matter what color you are, what gang you're from. Everybody wanted meth. So I was pretty much in good with everyone. But this friend of mine, he was from a certain gang, he was affiliated, and anyway, he had been jumped by these guys and came and asked me if I'd go back and help him tune these guys up. I thought, well, yeah, sure, I'll go. He had his eye knocked out with a hammer. So I thought, well, sure, I'll go help you tune these guys up. Well, long story short, I was driving the car and this friend got out and killed an innocent person. He got out with a gun and emptied the clip. And he killed an innocent person. It just so happened to be a woman. It wasn't even the gang members that he was going after. And it's a messy story to talk about. But that now there's 3 innocent girls gone, and which I felt very responsible for. I ended up sitting in. At first, I'm not going to talk. I've got a convict code. I'm not going to tell on him, and so for telling him, and I'm not going to tell him to work with him. I sat in jail for 2 years straight until they figured that out. And jail's a lot harder time than prisons. Prisons are made more so for guys to do longer periods of time. And so 2 years in jail, it was real, it was sad. It was another waste of time, but that was pretty much the icing on the cake for my addictive ways. I still didn't know how to stay sober. I just knew that another life lie. I mean, at some point, Todd, you've got to take responsibility for your actions and get right. I mean, my mom sat up by her phone for 25 or 30 years, wondering if I was going to be dead. She buried her youngest daughter. My second, her second daughter, I didn't tell you about. The day after that sister died, my other sister went into what's called psychosis, meth-induced psychosis, and she never came all the way back from it. Excuse me. So my family's pretty much been decimated by meth. And so when this happened in 2017, I sat in jail and just thinking, I didn't even want to get out of jail. I didn't even feel like I deserved to get out of jail. I was in the car. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know he was going to do that, but he did. Excuse me. And so I ended up getting out, and once again, I went and got high. But that's all I knew how to do. I went and got high on meth. And at that time, it was immediately at that time, I started bawling. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to get out here and get high. Not in the name of these girls who have passed. I'm not going to let it go down like that. I can't do this. And I ended up going back into treatment. A treatment center, Odyssey House by coincidence. It was funny. But I stayed there a year and learned all I could learn, and I still relapsed. And I was suicidal at that point. I'm like, if I can't live this life without getting high, I don't want to live anymore. I'm hurting too many people. I'm hurting my family. I'm a nemesis to society. This is not who I am. This is not who I know myself, who I am inside, and this was not the person and the man I wanted to be. So a chance, God intervening, a spiritual awakening. There was a treatment center in Central Utah that focused on quantum physics, holographic human stuff, learning why our brain does what it does, instead of people telling me, well, you're an addict and this is how your cycle goes and this is what you do. I know I'm an addict. I know how my cycle goes. Tell me how to fix it. Tell me how to better this. Well, this quantum approach actually showed me that through our senses in our body and through how we think, our subconscious works as a program. Our subconscious is constantly telling us what to do. And so that's all my brain was doing. You would get a feeling from it, and that's all I knew. The feeling, use, go to prison, get out, same thing over and over again. Well, this quantum level approach taught me how to imprint or reprogram on top of these old programs, if you will. And it worked. And it's by way of guided imageries and guided techniques and telling my mind certain things and practicing it. And by the grace of God, I've stayed sober in that aspect. If that was the end of the story, everything would be grand. But I would be blessed with a couple more challenges, we'll say. A couple years ago, when I got out of that program, I had a lump on the side of my neck because they had pulled a bunch of teeth. Because meth's bad for your teeth, by the way. If anybody doesn't know out there, meth's bad for your teeth. They pulled a few teeth, and it left a lump on the side of my neck that I went home with. And I thought it was just my lymph nodes acting up from them pulling the teeth. Well, I went in and they biopsied it, and I sat in a doctor's office one fine day when they told me that I had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma. It was spread throughout my body. It was in every organ, in every lymph node, stage 4 plus, and that I was going to die from it, but not that day. That's basically how they told me. And in my head, I'm thinking with God, dude, you and I have come a long way, and I'm not going out with this. I probably was really thinking, I'll do anything, God, just don't kill me. I was making deals, right? Mm-hmm. I had lived in a 25-year meth and bath salt addiction all these lives lost. I couldn't go out. My life was, I'm not ready to be done. I have had too much making up to do. And so I started go. I didn't make any deals because we don't make deals with God, but I begged God. I said, please, pull me through this. And I started chemo. I went through chemo, and I won't go too much into it, but there's my 5th month in chemo. I was at our outpatient. I was still going to outpatient every day and trying to show up and laugh. And chemo was hard. Chemo is really hard. It's like when you do chemo, it's like, I felt really lousy in my life. I've overdosed a bunch of times. I've been dead before, but chemo's like taking your body and just wringing it out. And you don't really want to live after chemo, but I wanted to live. Like what's the options here? And I went through the chemo, and the 5th month out of 6, I went around what's called an energy enhancement system. There are these machines that emit scalar waves. And I won't go into it. It's a big story because it's part of my wife's and our lives now, because we actually bought the facility that does this. But what the machines are is they emit scalar waves. And scalar energy raises the body's energy. It corrects your DNA and lengthens the telomeres in your DNA and quadruples the mitochondria in your bloodstream. And what happened was I went around this, and all of a sudden I started feeling better. It was like a gift from God. I'm like, no way, and long story short, I was going around these machines. I ended up with the opportunity to open the first facility in Utah, and the Huntsman Cancer Institute here in Salt Lake can't figure out why I'm still in remission. I'm 2 years into remission. They say 95% of people with my blood cancer relapse back into cancer the first year. And I'm going on 2 years in remission. That's almost the end of the story, Christine. I got one little bit here left for you.
You're the damn Energizer Bunny.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, you'll like this one, man. I've been around these machines. I'm living my best, not living my best life. I'm coming back from chemo, kills all your white blood cells, it kills everything. Well, the scalar energy was rebuilding this, and the Cancer Institute can't figure out how I'm doing this, but that wouldn't be the end of the story. A couple months later, I was in the grocery store, and my heart started hurting. And I fell down on the ground, down on the knee, and my heart was hurting. And I thought, oh no. And I tell this jokingly, but the first thing I thought was, I wasn't in Walmart. I said, thank God I'm not going to die in Walmart. Because there's some weirdos up in Walmart. I don't care where, it doesn't matter
that
where
is
you
not
go.
the place you want to die.
Yeah, and I didn't want to die, but my heart was hurting. Long story short, 4 or 5 days later, I was in emergency open heart surgery for what they call a widowmaker. I had an aneurysm that grew in my aorta that would have killed me. They said, here you go. So I'm like, here we go with this conversation with God again. I'm like, dude, I wanted to live from cancer, but I didn't really ask for this part, So went through the open heart surgery, and I made it, and I'm still here, and I'm gratefully blessed. And a couple months after that, I was really lonely. This is the last thing I need a woman in my life, right? Because I didn't deserve one by any means, but I was getting on these stupid sites like Tinder or Bender or what, I don't know what they're called. They're just these, where I was looking for a little bit of attention, and I may not have posted some pictures on there, and somebody saw these pictures and sent me back a thing saying they wanted $10,000 or they were going to share these pictures with my mom. And I said, do they not know my mom? No, my mom knows I've been charged with murder before. Do they not know my mom's going to care about these stupid pictures? So I was really frustrated, really just wanted to be loved and to love somebody. And I ended up posting on a site called Silver Singles because I had just turned 50 years old. I would never do anything in my life like this. This was a last ditch effort, last straw, like a shot, like just rolling the dice. And lo and behold, there was a pretty little blonde gal about 2 hours away from me in Logan, Utah, and way up north here in this brutally cold place in Utah, posting on a site called Educated Singles. Now that's the irony of this. Educated Singles, like, right, they hooked us up together. She posted on Educated Singles, and I'm on Silver Singles. And anyway, they all work together, right? And so we come together, and I guess it was a match made in heaven because we eloped a year ago in November. We went to Sedona, Arizona, and she couldn't wait to get a ring on my finger, or vice versa. But I ended up with a woman who's 35 years into recovery herself. And she's also a doctor of natural medicine, and she's a licensed therapist. And she taught me how to raise my frequency. She taught me about frequency because when I was when I was in my addiction and I was doing all these shady, dark crimes and things, think of that as like a 50 or 25 frequency, and then think of Buddha or the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa as a 700 frequency, right? And so I could wrap my head around this. This was kind of like the quantum stuff that got me sober. And so my wife was kind of a godsend in this way, that she was there and the one that's going to teach me how to be a better person now. How, because I didn't want to just get sober and be a normal everyday person. I don't think any of us want to do that. When we've suffered so much in our addiction, we want to exceed that 200 or 300 frequency where everybody else tops out in the world. Policemen, firemen, school teachers, they're all great people. Mm-hmm. They do their job, they go home, they pay their bills, they don't cause the scene. But I'm not content with just being out. I want to spread the word, Christine. Mm-hmm. I want everybody to get sober. Mm-hmm. So I was blessed with my wife, and I'm going to throw a plug in there. She told me it's not a Bible, but it's called A Course in Miracles. And she teaches a meditation group on this. And I started getting involved. This is a guy who's got ADD. I couldn't meditate to save my life. Right? Mm-hmm. I spent 17 years in prison and still couldn't meditate. And that's sitting in a dark cell. I talked to God, but I never learned how to meditate. So now my wife is teaching me about raising my frequency. This Course in Miracles, it's not a Bible, it's not a religion. It is the word of, they say a word of Jesus that came to an atheist. I think she was a psychiatrist in the 60s. And so it's funny how it came about, but it's just one of the things I do today to better myself. I attend a 12-step anonymous group a couple times a week. I'm working on writing my book. My wife is an author also. She's got 7 or 8 books, and she's written our story and my story combined this last year in my recovery. She's combined it with the teachings, and I'll share that information with you. You can point people towards this book that's coming out.
Sure.
It's how I've stayed sober, and she's taught me that there is hope. Because that's all I really want to do is spread hope. Yeah, like I think that's your passion and what you're doing too. Is
yes, sir.
Just want to spread hope to people that there is a way out. Even a guy who's been in prison 6 times, and those are just 3 deaths that were real close to me. I mean, I didn't get graphic and tell you about all the deaths. We've all seen bad things, but I don't tend to focus on those anymore. But I noticed that each day, if I can wake up and suit up and just show up, and a lot of days it's hard, mm-hmm. because I'll tell you, I've got an amazing life. My wife I came into this, and she's well-to-do. I'm not going to say that I found a sugar mama by any means, but it's hard wanting to go out and really look for more when I have everything I need. I'm sober. I'm in recovery. I'm not sitting in a prison. I'm not sitting in the back of a police car. I'm not laying on a gurney where my family's being told to come in and say bye to me because I'm going to die. That happened more than once. Mm-hmm. I have an amazing life today, and so I'm gratefully blessed with just where I'm at today. So there are days I struggle with wanting to do more, but I feel like part of stuff like this is part of my purpose, helping to spread the word. Because I know there's people out there right now in this brutal cold that's killing a lot of homeless people, mm-hmm. that are struggling with addiction right now and don't feel any hope and don't know that there's any hope, And so if I can help you even reach one of those, and I feel like that's why God's kept me around, as well as you and what you're doing,
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that, Todd. And I got to tell you, just, man, the Energizer Bunny just came to mind. And it's one of those things that we can't waste a hurt. We can't waste a hurt. And I think I speak for both of us when I say the gratitude that is so internal for having survived what we have survived. That's almost a drug itself, right?
But,
And it's like when you think about, someone had asked me before I even started this podcast, who's your audience? And I had to think for a minute, and I can, like I said, I in hearing your story, I know that you have that ability too, to just kind of go, Twilight Zone right back to getting that phone call regarding your sister, or getting that phone call regarding your baby girl, or getting that diagnosis, that just hopelessness, which to me is hell. That's a separation from God that just it's that just. And so when you have that hope, it's like you just can't contain it. You have to, you're it's like your soul you have to share, so and so my answer was, I want to reach that me that was ready to eat a bullet. I want to
yeah.
reach that person to just go, one more day, give me one more hour, because I truly believe that broken spirits recognize broken spirits. And thus healed spirits, or, broken spirits also recognize healed spirits. As well as I do, we can talk to a normie or someone who's, there is such a thing as problem drinkers. There is some people that have dabbled in pills or dabbled in, what, I'm talking about us that it almost took out. There, people recognize that and can call us on our bullshit just as soon as look at us. I mean, when you're authentic, the reach that you have for that person that still suffers, that's just freaking gold, man. That's God's hand. That is God's hand reaching out to save you and me that's still out there, And when you don't honor that, things suffer. That's what I've learned, at least about myself. That's why, I'm a mortgage broker by trade. Believe you me, I have a full-time job. I need to be uptown right now at my desk. But the fact of the matter is to not do, and this is just what God has just laid in front of me for now, to try to spread that hope, to not do that, and is not honoring a part of me that it's just that it's not as if I have a choice, just like with you. I mean, the fact of, oh my gosh, look at all of that you just told me, and look at you, someone told me once, my higher power, who I choose to call God, someone told me, or asked me, what do you want? What do you want out of this life? And it's like, my goal is, because I believe there is a heaven. I believe that I probably will go there if I don't fall too far. My goal is to have maybe one person come up to me and say, I'm here because of what you said, or what you did, or you showed up.
That's a good purpose.
That's all I want. That's all I want. I'll write a home loan when I go back uptown, and I'll do. But the fact that we can turn our mess into our message, and test into our testimony, and share that, we can't hold that. That is such a, I have come to. It took me a while, and I'm sure it took you a while too, and you're still probably working on it, to have such gratitude for my past. I have to honor even the terrible things, because that's what, look at you sitting in appears to be a beautiful home. You've got a gorgeous wife that adores you. What? Some of these things had to happen for that path to lead where you're sitting right now. So it's like, it's, I don't know. I love recovery. And it's, I too, when you were talking about, I can't use, and I can't not use, it's like, what's the point of even being here? That's That's the worst feeling in the world.
The worst.
The worst.
I love your passion and enthusiasm. It helps. It definitely helps me. That's my biggest take from this is that, that's where my fire lies too.
You are ordained by God. I don't know if I have the right to say it, but I'm going to say it twice. You are ordained by God. God is going to use you in such ways. You scare me. I can't wait to see that, because I can just, I know that we're on Zoom and I know that I can't hug your neck, but I'm just telling you right now that I feel your heart. And I know that you have a passion to save people that are still out there, to be a vessel. I know you can't save people. Let me back that truck up. I can't save it, but I can be willing to be a vessel to use my experiences to benefit others. And
Sure.
when you do that, all other things just seem to fall into a cute little line right behind it. And life is beautiful.
Sure.
When we never thought it was going to be. How can people reach you, or, tell me the things?
I've started a Facebook page called Reeling in Recovery, capital REAL, and it's funny because I'm a big fisherman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was going to be spelled reeling like you a normal reeling, but it was already taken. So my wife and I came up with this idea. Well, what about capitalizing REAL? Because I feel like I can now honestly say I'm real about my recovery.
Right.
So Reeling in Recovery, or Todd H on my Facebook. My wife says, well, if you had your book written, you can tell her that you have a book, but I can share. My wife has a landing page, I think, for the book that she's written she's looking for beta readers. So I'll share that information with you.
Yeah. Send me an email.
Send
me an email with all those things. And I'll definitely get it linked when the episode drops, for sure. Yeah.
For sure. And then, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on, and help spread the.
Thank you for surviving.
Thank you.
Thank you for surviving it. We need you. Yeah. We as in the warriors that are just trying to spread the message. We need you, a strong person with a testimony. Man, you got to start screaming from the mountaintops, and I know you are. And that's amazing. God bless you, Todd Hull. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Purpose Driven Sobriety Podcast. Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.